Have you ever wished that you could go back in time and change a part of your past? Hiroshi Nakahara might not have said his wish out loud, but this is how Jiro Taniguchi's A Distant Neighborhood begins. After a business trip, his feet carry him to a train bound for his hometown that he grew up in. Figuring that it has been 23 years since his mother's death, he decides to visit her grave, only to pass out and pull a Jimmy Kudo, regaining consciousness as his 14-year-old self. But unlike Jimmy Kudo, Nakahara really has gone back in time to a world of his 14-year-old self. In a state of disbelief, he goes home and figures the whole thing will blow over when he wakes up. But it doesn't. At first, this is such a miracle to him that he spends his time in school taking advantage of the usefulness of his body in athletics while using his adult mind to excel in school. Memories are everywhere, and for the time being, he's just reliving his 14-year-old life for reasons unknown to him. Then he begins to notice that some of his actions have changed his past subtly. A girl he never even got to speak to before has become his girlfriend, and certain events happen differently or in different orders. He begins to wonder if this will have any bearing on the timeline he came from, or if he's still just hallucinating the whole thing. But one day, he goes over to his new friend Shimada's house and ends up getting a little tipsy when he forgets he only has the body of a 14-year-old and can only handle alcohol about as well as most college freshmen. He says a few things about future events to a somewhat confused Shimada, and the incident ends with his father picking him up. That's when Nakahara remembers a key event to occur this year. His father will leave their family at the end of the summer. Nakahara makes up his mind. He's going to find out why his father left and stop him from leaving no matter what it takes. With the mind of an adult, Nakahara looks at his past life differently. He learns things that may have been too difficult for him to accept the first time around, and that is where the strength of the story lies. The story isn't so much about Nakahara trying to change his past as it is coming to terms with it and accepting it. I wouldn't dare spoil how the confrontation with his father ends. On the negative side, certain parts of the story seem a bit oddly forced, like the relationship breakup with the girl he dated, which takes about, 2 panels to happen? And certain parts seemed rather unnecessary to me, like his father's childhood friend's side story. The story was more than engaging and interesting to read, and anyone who would want to see their past through their now adult eyes should find something to enjoy here. During the first volume, the story flows well enough, but the purpose of the story seems noticeably absent until almost the last chapter. The second volume makes Nakahara's objectives more clear, but the flow isn't quite as good, and it seemed almost rushed at times, like the main objective should have kicked in a few chapters earlier. It's not a deal breaker, and it's unlikely to prevent the reader from understanding or enjoying it, but the overall experience is still very good, and these are the few nitpicks I have with the actual content. The reread value isn't very high, but it's a good read, and you'll always find a reason to go back and read something good again. A Distant Neighborhood is 2 volumes long and available from Fanfare Ponent Mon. However, I am only going to say this title is worthy of a rental due to a few bones I have to pick with the actual formatting of the English books. 1. It is flipped. If you are a manga fan, you should already know if this will bother you or not. It should be noted that none of the artwork looks odd due to the flip. 2. The books are simply too big. They don't fit on my shelves. The artwork quality shows up nicely, but is there any reason for this book to be physically larger than the Battle Royale Ultimate Editions? And above all, number 3, they cost $23 each. And at that price, I'd expect something more, like the obviously color pages to actually be printed in color, but they're not, or for a higher page count, which they also are not, at the standard length of 190 to 200 pages each. The paper quality is nice, but not to the point where the $23 cost is justified in my eyes. This is my main basis for calling this a rental title only. It's rather hard to justify paying $46 for both volumes. It's definitely worth reading, and if a cheaper version ever comes out, then you should consider buying it.